All right, sorry for that delay. So we'll go straight to what we have. If there's any question you asked before, please tag me to it so that I can attend to that. But if there is none, fine, let's just continue. So I will start by creating a new folder. I will call it, it's been a while, I've missed you guys, JS3. Okay, I can't even remember where to start from. I have this folder, and I think, let me confirm that it's recording. Yes, it's actually recording. Okay, and I have this. So the first thing I will need to do is create a JavaScript file, maybe index.js and index.html. It's been a while I wrote index.html. Let me zoom in a little. I think this is okay. Yes, it's been recorded. Thank you. All right. Let me know if you can see my screen and if this font size is okay. So I'm just setting up, and I want to believe you know how to set up before you start your project. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, is this font not okay? Do I have to increase it like this? Let me see if this works. Okay, it should work. All right, so let's begin. Now, the last thing we did was the while loop and the for loop. Just to confirm that this is connected, I will try and console log first, and I have first here, so I will remove that. Okay. So if you are okay and we are good to go, please drop a thumbs up. You can see my screen. The font size is okay. We can continue. Please drop a thumbs up so I know that we can continue. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up, so that we continue. All right, thank you. Now we've talked about loop, the while loop and the for loop, and then the next thing we entered was the if. Okay. Next thing we entered was the if or else statement. And we were able to cover the basic if or else statement, which, for example, if I have something like const is married, let's use something like GG is equal to 10, and say if GG is double or triple, double equal to 10, console log yes, else console log no. So I have something like this. This is a simple if or else statement. And if or else statement can be so broad, and it can also be very simple and shortened. So here we are trying to compare. Now, I told you the last time, whenever you see double equals or triple equals, we are comparing. Now, the same thing with this or this. We are also comparing. So the four of them are for comparisons. Now, we are going to treat the four of them and know what the difference are. Here, we are trying to check is the variable gg equal to 10? If it is equal to 10, then console log yes, else console log no. Now, if I save this, it's going to console log yes. And the reason is because the variable gg is equal to 10. But if I change it to 100 and save it, now it is console logging no, because the variable gg is not equal to 10. So automatically it falls down to here. So this is a simple if or else statement. Please, if you have a question, drop it on the question and answer topic. I may not be able to see it any other place. All right, so now let's take this if or else statement a step further. We can have inside one if or else statement, we can have so many ifs and so many else. So I can say something like this, 20, or maybe 20, and then I say else if gg is equal to 20, console log no, else console log maybe. Now this is me tacking on another condition, so I can tack on so many conditions. That is why I said we can have so many ifs inside one if or else statement. You can't hear me very well. I am sorry. I don't know. Is it breaking, or I think from my own network is actually stable. Now, if you're also having the same issue, let me know. If my line is breaking, if it's breaking from my own end, please do let me know. Okay, so here we have the first if statement. We are trying to check if the variable is equal to 10. And then we are saying else, tacking on another if statement again to check if the variable is equal to 20. Now you can tack on so many if or else statements. So my network is breaking. Are you sure? Who else is having the same challenge? Is it from my own end? Really? Okay. Yeah, I think my own network is pretty stable. It's stable from this end. So, but that's fine. All right. So what I was trying to explain with this is you can tack on so many if or else statements. So many. It can be up to 10. It can be up to 100 if that is what you want. For example, let's assume you are working for an examination board. For example, something like JAM, which is going to be something you will do. You might say, for those that their scores are less than 40, you want to print out failed. But if it is between 40 and maybe around 59 or so, you want to print pass. If it's between 60 to 69, you want to print maybe good or very good. And then from 70 and above, you want to print out excellent. So that's like an if statement. You can use an if statement for that. So, but I want to tack on this here. You can also add it here if you want. You can tag on so many, but there has to be one last else statement. So if you are having so many if statement, if or else, make sure that there is one last else statement as the default. Meaning, if it doesn't fall through here, it will fall through here. If it doesn't fall through here, then it has to come in here. If it doesn't come in here, automatically this becomes the default. So no matter the number of if statements you have, there has to be one default else statement. That's one. And I'll leave this like this and move on to something else so that I can explain these ones. So I can have another if or else statement here. Like this is an if statement. I'm trying to check gg else, and this is not else. CLG no, CLG yes. So this is a new if or else statement, and I'm using negations. Now this question mark or exclamation mark means not equal. Now this can be a single double equals or double equals. So this exclamation mark here means not equal. Whereas when you have double equals or triple equals, you are doing equal. So here we are saying the variable GG is not equal to 10. That is what this negation means. So anytime you see negation, it means not equal. Not, let's just say not. Negation, not. Now the equal there, it means not equal, but with just the exclamation mark means not. So here we are checking the variable GG is equal to 20. So if we are saying GG is not equal to 10, so will it print out yes or will it print out no? And if I try that, it's printing out yes. The reason why it is printing out yes is because GG is actually 20 and 20 is not equal to 10, and that is why it printed out yes. But if I do something like this, GG is not equal to 10, will it print out yes or no? Now if I save that, it's printing out no, because the variable GG is equal to 10. So 10 is not equal to 10. No, that's false. So exclamation mark here means negation. Now the question now becomes, what is the difference between the double equals and the triple equals? The double equal and the triple equal. So we can say that one is very strict and the other is not very strict. For example, I will use double equal here. So the variable here is 10. We are trying to check, is 10 equal to 10? So if I save it, it will say yes. The reason why it's saying yes is because 10 is actually equal to 10. But what if I change this from the data type from numbers to string? Now this is a string, but it's a string 10. Now this is a number and it's actually 10. Now the both of them are 10, 10, but they are not the same data type. But if I save it, okay, yeah, Nathaniel, something close to that. So if I save it, it's still printing out yes. The variable 10, which is actually a string, is equal to the value 10, which is also a number. So when you are using double equal is not very strict. It just checks the value. The values are the same thing. Automatically, it falls through because the values are the same thing. But if I put triple equals here and save it, it says no. Triple equal is very, very strict. Even though the values are the same thing, the data type must be the same. Otherwise, triple equal will fail it. So the double equal is not very strict, but the triple equal is very, very strict. Meaning that the double equal will only check the value. So if I change this to 2 and change this to 2 and return to double equals. Now for double equals, it's only checking the value. The values here, they are 2, 2. So for double equal, it will pass through because it's only checking the value. But if I use triple equals and save it, triple equal is very strict. Even though the values are the same, the data types are not the same. So it will fail it. So that is the difference between double equals and triple equal. Now, sometimes you want to use double equals, sometimes you want to use triple equals. Now, it depends on what you are building on your backend. Sometimes you need the user to be exact. No, not just the user, the front-end developer to be very, very exact, because a little mistake can cause a break on the backend. So that's for yes. I want to confirm if I'm actually recording. And yes, I am. Sorry for the little delay. I know that my village people, they don't like me so much. I've always known, but today it's actually another proof. So this is what we call the if or else statement. But there is a short way of writing if or else statement. There's a short way of writing it, and we call that ternary operators. Ternary operators. Now, I use it a lot. A lot of front-end developers will use it. A lot of back-end developers will also use it most times. So if I have something like const A is equal to 2. Sorry. Const A is equal to 2. And I want to use ternary operators. Ternary operators is the shorthand of if or else statement. So if you don't want to write this long if or else statement, you use ternary operators. For example, you say A equal to 2. So here you are asking a question. Is A equal to 2? That is the question mark there. Now, if it is, then do something. Maybe console log first. Then the second thing is this column. The column is the else. Console log. Let me now say first, I will make this bigger, then bring it here. All right, so here I'll say console log second. So whenever you use this question mark, you are asking a question. You are saying, is A equal to 2? If it is true, then console log this. Then the column here is else. Console log this. So if I save this, and it says assignment to constant operator, have I used the variable A before? Okay, here I'm using assignment operator instead of double equals. Sorry. All right, so you can also use double equals or triple equals if you want, but in JavaScript, you need to know the difference between double equals and triple equals. Double equal just checks the value, whereas triple equal will check both the value and the data type. So this is a shorthand for ternary operators. Now you can use it not just for numbers, you can use it for something like true. So here now you can say, is this equal to true? If it is equal to true, do this, else do the second one. So this is a short way or shorthand for writing ternary operators. And you can actually make it longer the same way you do we do the if or else statement. I can then say else A double equal to something else. Let's say let me go with numbers now since I want to make it longer. So I can say is equal to 5. If it is equal to 5, do that. Is it now equal to 7? If it's equal to 7, print something again. Else, fall back to default. Now, still the same way you write your if or else statement. Sorry. I don't need this one for now, so I'll cut this one out. Command X. Yeah. So I can have two ifs inside the ternary operator, but to keep it simple, let's just go with just one if statement. I think the double is going to confuse us. So here we are just checking, is the variable A equal to 5? If that's the case, then console log first, else console log second. This is supposed to be second, but like that. So this is what a ternary operator is. Now, do you have any question on if or else statement or ternary operators? if or else statements or ternary operators. And also, you don't have to cram this. Like I said, there are so many documentations online. W3 schools, if else statement. So any question on if or else statement, so this is a simple if or else statement. Now you have the condition, and then you can have so multiple lines of block of code here. We're going to do that on our backend. Example is this, and also you can use greater than and less than to check that. So while we are done with if or else statement, we can move to something else. No. The next thing we want to talk about is functions. Functions in JavaScript. Functions. Now, functions are very, very important when it comes to JavaScript. So what is a function? Now, I define function as a robot. Why do I define function as a robot? That is because I've used a lot of functions as a robot. Now, what is a robot? A function is like a robot that has been designed to do a particular thing. And whenever you call it, it will come and do that exact thing that it has been designed for. For example, let's say you have a robot that cleans shoe or maybe polish shoe for you. Whenever you call that robot by its name, it is coming to clean shoe. It will not do any other thing. It will only clean shoe because it has been programmed to clean shoe. Now, if you have another robot that cooks food, the moment you call that robot by its name, it is coming to cook food. It will not do anything else, just to cook food. Now, that is what a function is like in JavaScript. You write a function, you give it a name. Now, you call it by that name every time. The moment you call it by that name, it will respond and do exactly what it is programmed for. So the two things to take away from functions is that, number one, it must have a name. Number two, it will have a specific task that it knows how to do or it is supposed to do. That is what a function is. Now, an example of function, I will write a function. This is the function. The next thing I will give here is the name of the function. And then parentheses and curly braces. Now, this is how to define a function in EX5. We have the keyword function, and here we have the name function. Now, you can call it any name. You can give it any name, anything you want to call it. For example, I can call it Nathaniel. That's the name of this function. But there must be brackets and there must be curly braces. So this is what makes a function. Now, this function is supposed to console log something like first, or maybe say God is good, or let's say intro. Yeah, it's going to console log intro. Now, if I go to my console log, I will not see anything. I'm not seeing anything in a console. Now, this is a robot. It will not do anything until you call it by name. So how do you call a function? You will come down here and call the name Nathaniel and put parentheses. So if I put that and save it, it will print out intro. Now I have it printing out intro here. And this doesn't have to be capital letter, small letter rather, not capital letter. So this is what a function is. If you create a function, you define what that function is supposed to do, and you give that function a name. Now, whenever you want to do that thing, you call that function, it will come and do that. So that is what a function is. Now, the next thing is I can take this function a step further. Maybe not this one. I will remove this and then take it step further and say what the function will do is going to add 4 plus 8 together. it should say const answer is equal to 4 plus 8, and then it will console log answer. So this function here has a specific task. The task it will do is whenever you call it, it will create a variable called answer, and then it will sum up 4 plus 4 together and store it inside answer. Then it will console log answer. Now, if I save this, you see that it is not printing out anything in the console. The reason why it's not printing out anything in the console is because it is like a robot. It will not do anything on its own. So if I call it now, Nathaniel, and save it, it says answer is not defined. Okay, I'm using capital letter instead of small letter. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I got that. So now I have it printing out answer 4 plus 4. Now, if I call it again, it's going to print out 12 multiple places. But what if I don't want to print out 4 and 4? I want to give it a random number, or maybe random numbers randomly. You can define variables. Now, this can be real variable names, but we'll use A, B, and C. By adding variables inside here, you are telling this function to expect 3 variables or 3 values whenever you call it. So you say, you know what, add A to B and subtract C. So whenever I call you, I am going to pass in 3 variables. That is what this thing means here. So if you put 2, it means it should expect 2 variables. Now, there is no limit to the number of variables you can pass into a function. You can pass in as so many variables as you like or you want. But the problem here is if you tell this function to expect a variable and you call this function without passing in a variable, it's going to print out none. None means not a number. So now it is trying to do arithmetic expression with alphabets because you called it without passing in variables. So to solve that, we're going to pass in something like 2, 3, and 5. So whenever you call this function, you pass in the exact number of variables that is expected. Now it is printing out 0, and I understand why, because 2 plus 3 is 5. 5 minus 5 is 0. But what if I do something like 17 and save it? Now it is printing out 15. So you can use a function to do arithmetic formulas. Like you have a function to do anything you want. For example, in this your program, I have a function that calculates average score. So I just pass in each student's number and it calculates the average score and return it. You can have a function that prints out like the last cohort, which is cohort 1, which I think some of you are going to work on that project, is to create a function that prints out certificates. So the student will come, type in their name, and then it will print out the certificate for them. For example, something like this. We can say, okay, let's not go there. We can say something like this. I'll keep this one and create another one here. The same Nathaniel function. You can call your own function anything. I want to use Nathaniel today. I don't know why, but let's go ahead. So let's assume that the function is expecting 1 variable, and that variable is called name. Maybe name of student. That's what we call it. So it's expecting 1 variable, and it's going to call start or maybe certificate. And here we say something like exclamation mark, good morning, it's actually afternoon, and then we pass in name of student here. So this function is expecting 1 variable, the name of the student, and then whenever you pass in that name of that student, it's going to print out a statement that says good morning with the name of the student, and then console log it the console. So here, if you're passing number, it's not going to work. So it's expecting just one variable. If you pass in number, it will print something like answer is not defined. Where is it again? Okay, I'm calling answer instead of set that rather. So now it's saying good morning 17. But because we want to work with a string, we can say something like David and save it. Now it's saying good morning David. So you can have a function that accepts student's name and embed it on a certificate and prints it out. Some persons may work on that project, some persons will not all. So, but that's a simple function. But let's go deeper, a little deeper into these other functions. I will cut this. Let's take it a step further. So here, now this function expects 3 variables. And notice that sometimes users can be very funny. You may ask them to, maybe you created a website where they calculate their currency, conversion rate, they calculate any values at all, but you're expecting 3 values from the user. And the user refuses to enter 3 values. Some people do it. A lot of you do it. You come to the website and type in 2 values, or maybe 1, or you will not even type any value at all, and you will send. Now, if you send, it's going to print out something like not a number. And if this error is not handled, it can cause the website to crash. But as a developer, you can set default values. So you can come in here and say this default value is 0. The default value is 1. The default value is 2. Now, this is not constant. It doesn't mean that their default values must be 1, 2, 0. No, you can set any random default value. For example, in a case where you're expecting the user's name, if the user doesn't enter their name, by default, the name should be user. Good morning, user. That should be the default value. So if you're entering currency or conversion rate, you can set default values for that. Now, we are just saying that you can set default values for variables that your function is expecting so that your website will not crash. So here now, whether you call this function with a variable or you call it without a variable, it is going to return an answer. It's going to return a response. But if you pass in a variable, something like 100, 200, 300, and save it, it is going to ignore the default values. That is what it will do. So if you pass in 100, this 100 is going to be for A. And that's very, very important. The order with which you arrange the variables. Now, the first variable that came in here is A, meaning that the first number here will be assigned to A. The first number will not be assigned to B. It will not be assigned to C. So whatever variable that comes first here will be assigned this value, the first value. Whatever variable that comes second will be assigned the second variable. So if you want to just pass in random values, no, it will arrange them on first come, first serve basis. So the first variable takes the first value, the second variable takes the second value, like that. And you can have default values. Now, if I don't pass in the third value, it will assign this value to this one, assign this value to this one, and pick this default value. So bottom line is it will definitely return something and not crash. That is what a function will do. So we have, this is function in EX5. We have function in EX6. But let me show you why. I'll cut this and save it. Come here and call it and save it. It is still returning a variable. Now, in JavaScript, what I just did now is wrong. I am calling the function before defining the function. It is wrong. You know that the browser will start reading your codes from top to bottom. So if it starts reading from the top, it means that it will see you calling this function first before it actually sees where the function is defined. So this is actually wrong in JavaScript, but this is possible because of hoisting. Now, hoisting, a lot of us have argued that hoisting is wrong in JavaScript. What is hoisting? Hoisting in a situation where JavaScript will take all your variables, declarations, all you have defined, your variables and your functions that you've defined, and it will place all of them at the top of your code. It means that even if this function was at the bottom of your code, when the browser starts reading your code, the JavaScript is going to place all of them at the top. So it will pick out the variables, pick out the functions, all of them, and place all of them at the top. So even though you are seeing this function at line 44, the browser is actually seeing it at the first line, which is why this is possible, calling it before where it is defined. But this is wrong, reason being that hoisting can affect your project in long term. It can affect your project. You should know what the function will do before you call it. For example, here we are passing in just numbers. What if we want to display student score alongside their number? For example, something like this, I will say passing a string Joshua. So what this will do is it will create a variable and say your name is, and passing B is the name of the user, and say and score is, and passing A. So what if we've already called this function with just numbers, and then while you are trying to define the function, you then decide, okay, I want to do something different. I want to actually define name and score together in one function, but you've already called the function somewhere else, so you can't change it here. So hoisting can actually affect project in long term, which is why we then have things like arrow function. But let's run this. If I save this, you see it says your name is 200 and your score is 100, which is actually wrong. But if I don't pass in a variable, let's pass in something variable and say David and save it. So it says your name is David and your score is 100. So this is a simple function, and I will close this. Now, to curb the error of hoisting, we have arrow functions. Now, arrow functions are defined the exact same way we define any variable. For example, HH is equal to. Now, this is how we define a variable. This is also how you would define a function. And what is an arrow function? An arrow function is bracket, fat arrow, and curly braces. So the three of them put together is an arrow function. The bracket here is this bracket we have here. The arrow here is the keyword function. And the parenthesis is this parenthesis you have here. So I can do this same thing. I'll copy it and put it inside here. Let me uncomment this out. I'll comment this out. And then the same variables that it is expecting, I'll put it inside here. But if I try to call it before defining it, I'll have an error. It says Nathaniel is not defined. So we use arrow functions to actually curb the issue of hoisting in JavaScript. So you cannot call an arrow function before you define it. So you have to define it first before you call it. So if I save this, okay, and it's actually not HH. I've changed the name. HH. Sorry. So now it says your name is David and your score is 100. So you can actually give any function a name and call it however you want. So Do we have any question on functions?
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, sir. My first question is based on the parameters you put into the functions. Now, how would
Okay.
you manage a situation where you want the user to enter a number and the user happens to enter a string in the parameters? How will you be able to manage that?
Okay, you want the user to enter a number, but the user enters a string. Now, before
Yeah.
the function we get to, before that variable we get to your function in backend, that's what we call middlewares. Middleware is a function that runs in the middle. Now, I'm going to explain this maybe from next week. We'll start talking about backend stuff and all of that. But middlewares are more like validations. You do validations where you run an if statement with what you just said down. So you know that there are some cases where the user may enter variables like numbers when you're expecting a string. You may enter a string when you're expecting a number. So that function now will handle those things and return different error messages. For example, when you are expected to enter your password, but you don't enter your password, and you get a message that tells you password is required. So that is like a validation running in the middle before the main function will actually handle the request. And we're going to come to that part later. We'll come to all of that. So any other
My second
question?
question.
Okay, go ahead.
My second question. Okay, from the function where it has a default value, you set the
Yes,
default values and assigned numbers to them, like where you have A equals to 0, B equals to Joshua, and C equals to
yes,
something else. Now,
yes.
does it mean that if you are calling the function and you still impute maybe different values like 100, 50, 30, the function will still be called. It will not use those default values.
Exactly. Now, in this case here now, you see that we already set default values as 0, and then default value here as Joshua, and we are calling the variables inside the function. But when we are calling the function, we pass in new variables. So if you pass in the complete number of variables that it is expecting, it will ignore all the default variables. But let's say you pass in half, is expecting 2 variables and you pass in only one, it will ignore the first one and go with the second default variables. Now, you know, the first time I passed in David, it says your name is David and your score is 100. But right now, I am passing only the score. If I save it, you see now it is using the default name as Joshua. So that's what happens. If you pass in the complete number of variables that it is expecting, it will ignore all the default variables. But if you don't, it will pick maybe all of the default variables or some of the default variables, depending on how many variables you pass in. Now, I can call this function without passing in any variable, and it's still going to run because it has default values. So that's what happened with functions and their default variables. Any question on functions? Now, functions can run, functions so important. And you can't do JavaScript without function. In fact, you can't do the whole backend without function because everything on the backend is just functions, functions, functions. You have functions that will make sure that the user enters the variables you are expecting. You have functions that will go and check if this is open. You have a function that will find if the user is open. For example, let's say you want to build authentication for users to log in users. The first thing you want to do is you need to have a function that will accept the username and email, maybe their email and password. That's the first function. You need to have a function that will check if the email is correct and the password follows the same format. You have another function that will first find the user by that email to see that the user details actually exist on your dashboard or your database. If it doesn't, it should tell the user that this user does not exist or this user account does not exists. Now you have another function. Yes, JavaScript support OOP. In fact, JavaScript is an OOP, object programming. And that's like on a different level. Yes, it does. And you do a lot of object programming on the back end, a lot of them. And the people think, let's not go deeper. Let's come back first. Yeah, let's come back. We have a lot to cover, so let's not just jump and waste the whole time on something else. Any question on functions? Now, functions are very, very important.
Functions.
You say what?
Yeah, I still have question on functions.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Can you have a function in a function, sir?
Yes, you can. And that is called a callback function. A function that is inside a function. For example, I have this function here. And what it will do is this. You know what? This function is going to accept the name, accept the value, and all of that. Now let's create another function. I'll say const y. Sorry for the naming, I'm short of names. This is another function. So this function now is not going to do anything. Rather, it will be calling this function. And then here, I will call this other one, y. So what am I doing here? I am calling this function here. And this function in turn will call this other function. But you can actually take it a step further with Control X and actually put the whole of that function inside this function. You can do that. And then while you put it there, you have to then call this function again, because if you have a function, you must call the function. Otherwise, it will not run. So this is like a function inside a function. And that is the next step we're actually going into. Having a function inside a function. And it's called a callback function. A callback function is a function inside a function. So do we have any more questions? Any question? Before we move on to the next thing. No question. Are you serious? So this is what I will do. This is what I will do. I will just put a simple test here. Let me see if my text is going to work out fine. If it doesn't, fine. So I'll have a function here. I'll say const y is equal to an arrow function. So I will duplicate these functions like this. I have y, and then I have y. 3 functions. The first function is going to do console log. It's going to console log a plus 1. And then here I'm expecting a, and the variable of a is equal to 0. That's the first variable. I want to believe a lot of you are programmers, because if you are in my class, you'll be a very good programmer. Now I have y here. I'm calling y and I'm passing in 5 here. And this one expects b is equal to 3. You know what? Let me pass in b. And then I come in here. I have c is equal to 5. And then I'm calling y and I'm passing in c. Then I come here and I pass in y. As an expert, what do you think will be printed out in the console log? Your answers. Looking at these functions, what do you think will be printed out? Now, I have not run it. If you think it will not run, tell me it will not run. If it will run, tell me to run and tell me what value will be printed. Oh my God. No, this is not what I want to do. I want to do something like this. Tell me what value will be printed out in the console. What value do you think these functions will print out in the console? If you get it, then you get the idea of functions. And then we can move to the next step. Somebody said nothing. Okay, we have Joshua saying nothing. Any other person, what do you think this? There has to be an answer. Drop an answer. No right answer, no wrong answer. Just drop something. That's how I know the level at which you understand functions. You have to drop an answer. Drop anything. Somebody says 9. Drop anything. Just drop an answer. Look at it very well and tell me, what do you think will be printed out in the console? It's actually straightforward, pretty straightforward. Somebody says nothing, 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 nothing. Why are they all saying nothing? Why? I just explained the idea of callback functions. A function that is being called inside another function. Some say 20, nothing, 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 20. 9, I have that answer. Drop your answers. There's no right answer. There's no wrong answer. I just want to know the level at which you understand functions. Okay, any other person? We have 21 participants here. Somebody said 8. Okay. I don't know what to print. Of course, this is just coming out from, I just typed this. I don't have this written down anywhere. So, okay, what I'll do is, what I'll do is I'll save this and then check the console. It printed out 6. So the question is, why did it print out 6? Let's take it step by step. The first thing here is we have this first function. This function is expecting a variable but has a default value, meaning that it was going to add that variable to 1 and print out whatever that sum is. It will print it out. Now, but this function is called inside this other function. And this function is expecting a variable b, but has a default value for in case no value is passed into it. So that value here is what is passed into this first one here. So this means that this function is called here, but this variable is passed into it. So it goes in here. Now this second one is called here, whereas this third one is actually expecting a variable called c, and that variable c is passed into it. It means that the value of c will enter here. From here, it will come to this third one, this second one. It will enter into here, and from here, it will come to this first one, and then becomes the value of a. So this means that the value of a was actually the value of b, which came from c. So what we are doing is we called function 1 inside function 2. We called function 2 inside function 3. But we passed in the variable here into function 2, which is this. Then we passed in the value of b into function 1, which became this. And then we added it to this. Now, I don't know if that makes sense. The reason why I'm not explaining this is because this is actually empty. This function is expecting a variable, but when we called it, we didn't pass in any variable. Don't worry about it, Joshua. It was just a test. So don't worry about it. But let me just explain one more time. Maybe you might catch it. This YY is this function. This YY is this function. This Y is this function. Meaning that we called function 3 Function 3 in turn called function 2. Function 2 in turn called function 1. And then function 1 is the function that will console log the answer. So meaning that when we called function 3, we did not pass in any value. So the variable that we passed into this one is actually the default value, 5. Because we called function 3 without passing in any variable, it means that the variable here will become the default value of 5. So we are passing in the variable c here. So the value of c here is actually 5. We passed it into function 2. So function 2 now will no longer use the default variable because we are actually passing in a variable here. So function 2 in turn is passing in a variable into function 1, which is y. I can just say this is Nate, and then this is going to be Nathan, and then this is going to be Nathaniel. So we called Nathaniel here without passing in anything. We called Nathan here and passed in C, and we called Nate here. So here we called the third function without passing in anything. So it has to use this default variable. And then we called in function 2 here and passed in C into it. So the value of C is actually 5. So this variable is not going to be the value of 3. So this function is not going to use the value of 3 because we pass in C to it. So then in return, it called the first function, which is this one, and passed in. Sorry about it. I'm just going to leave this. Maybe when you run it, you understand it, but let's move on to something else.
Question on that, sir.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Okay. Now, let's say in the second function where you passed in the value of b.
Yes.
What if you don't use b, you use something like e? Will it work out?
Here.
No. Where you call the function. Yes, you use e.
What we are doing is this. This function is expecting a variable. You can call that variable anything. I can even call this function here wisdom, and I pass in wisdom here. So it doesn't matter what I call it. I'm just passing in variable. So the variable can have any name. I'm just using simple letters A and B and C so that I don't spend more time coming up with variable names. What's more important is we are passing in variable from top to bottom. So it started here, the variable is empty. So that means by default, this function is going to run with the default variable, which is C equal to 5. So when I call this Nathan function, I'm passing 6. I'm actually passing in 5 here. So in return, this Nathan function has been called with a number. So it is going to run, but it will not use this default 3. So the value here of wisdom becomes 5 that was passed in. So now when you then pass in wisdom into the first function, knowing that the value of wisdom is actually 5. So when it's coming here, it will not use this default variable 0. Rather, it will use 5 because value of wisdom that was passed in is 5. So now the value of A becomes 5. 5 plus 1 is 6. So if I save it, which is why it is printing out 6. So the 5 is actually coming from here. But if I change it and add a default value here, 10, can you guess what it will print now? Can you guess what it will print now? Let me just pass this here. Anybody? 11. So why do you think it will print 11? Because this is more like it's entering here and entering here. From here, we call the second one. So we're passing that variable here. So it enters here. we pass it into this one, it enters here. So this is just me calling a function inside a function, calling another function inside another function, just like that. So you might come across this a lot on your backend, but that's by the way. So if I save it and check, it's actually printing out 11. But let's do one dynamic and say const d is equal to 60 and then passing d. Now this will tell me whether you actually understand this explanation or you are doing a guesswork. What do you think it will print? Functions. What do you think it will print? Anybody? Any answer? $10. Somebody say 10. Really? We are doing three things. We are doing three things. Somebody said 11. Oh my God. Then it looks like the quiz is very difficult. Wow. Okay. So I'm going to skip this one. It's actually going to, now we are passing in 10 into this function. So that 10 becomes the value of C. We pass it into this function. But here we are ignoring the variable wisdom. Rather, we are using the variable D, which is assigned to be 60. So when you pass in D here, you are actually passing in 60. So the value this variable will assume now is now 60. And then if I save it, it's going to print out 61. It's not difficult, but if you follow it line by line, you understand it. So let's move on to something else. Let me see if we move on to something else, if that might help us understand the functions better. So we'll go to something else, and it's called higher array functions, or you call it methods. Higher array functions, or Dennis, is actually tricky, but it's very easy. Now, it's not difficult, but very, very easy. So let's talk about higher array functions or higher array methods. Now, these higher array methods, I know we've treated array const, let's say students is equal to square brackets. So I have something like name is David. Sorry for the spelling. And then the score is 90. Then we have another student. I will not do much. Let me just do two students. We have wisdom, and then we have wisdom. I'm going to give you pass mark like 60, just 60. So let's say you are working with Jam, for example. Just these are not enough. Let me add location, and I'll put Port Harcourt. And then here I will add, you know what, let me just copy this. And then wisdom, where are you? I'll just add Lagos. So let's say you are working or you work for JAM. And every year students are going to register for JAM scores and they will write JAM. Now, you as the developer, different persons want to see different things. For example, a governor may want to see all the students from his state. You know what? Let's go with states instead of location. Let's go with states. Rivers and Lagos. A governor may want to see all the students that have written exams from their own state. That's for the governor. Or maybe the JAM director, the person who's in charge of JAM, wants to see all the names of the students. Only the names of the students that wrote JAM. Only their names, not their score, not their location. Then maybe the exams and record want to see their name and their score. Their name and their score. And then the students themselves want to see only their scores because they know their names, they know their locations. What they don't know is their score. They want to see only their score. So you as the webmaster, or maybe as a developer or as the IT guy, how do you write your codes to serve different persons and different purposes? That is where higher array functions come in play. Higher array functions. Now, they are called higher array functions because they run in seconds, in milliseconds, they are done. Now, even if you have 1 million students that wrote JAM, it is going to look through the 1 million of them in split seconds. So that is why they are called powerful array function. If it's hundreds of millions of students that wrote the exam, it will look through all of them in seconds. Now, this is a type of loop. You know, we did the while loop and the for loop. Yeah, this is a type of loop, but it is a powerful loop, and that is why they are called higher. So they are higher array function. Now, forget that I am using just the names or the details of 2 students. You can apply this to millions of students, and it will still run the same number of seconds, the milliseconds, like that. So let's start for the first one. Let's say add score. Let's say add score. The first thing now is the president says, oh, a lot of persons failed JAM this year. JAM, please, can you add 10 marks across board to everybody? Add 10 marks across board to everybody. So you, as the backend developer, will you go and be changing their scores one by one? You can't do that. If you want to do that, you will exceed their timeline. So, but you can use a higher array functions. Now, higher array functions has a for each, map, and filter. It also has others, but these are the ones we're going to treat now. Filter, for each, map, and filter. So the first one is you want to add scores to every student. What you will do is call the name of that array and then call for each on it. Now, for each here is a function, is it not? Is a function, and you know it's a function because we are calling it with this bracket, parenthesis. For each. So what is for each? For each is a higher array method that will do something for each of these students. Just like the name, it is going to do something for each of these students. That is what for each is. It's going to do something for each of the students. For each of the students is going to do something. Now, what is that something you want to do? You want to add mark to all the students one by one. So that is what for each we do. So how do you do it? You pass in a callback function here. Now remember I told you that an arrow function is just bracket, part arrow, and curly braces. Now you can use the normal function here if you want. You can use the normal function here if you want, but I like using arrow function. So I will put an arrow function here, bracket, part arrow, and curly braces. It might be, but I think my network on this side is pretty stable. But is another person having the same issues? If it's breaking up, don't really worry about the breaking because we're still recording it. And for today's class, okay, don't really bother about that. So what will happen is, let me see if other persons are having the same issues. If you're having the same issues, you can let me know. But if you're not, drop a thumbs up so that we know where we stand on. Okay. Yeah, I understand that MTN network is pretty bad this period, but these things are not they're not out of play. What I would do is I will also let me find higher array methods. W3 schools, and do I have a reference? I don't have a reference. So I'll check this. Higher array methods. So this is just array method. It's not here. So I'm going to find an example. So I'll show you, but if you can't hear me clearly, don't worry. We have a video, let's say a recording. You'll get to watch it later, and I will encourage you to watch it because this might be our last class on basic JavaScript. Like, we've covered JavaScript, and this is the part where we're trying to cover everything on the basic JavaScript. So the next phase of JavaScript is the application of JavaScript. So what we have learned so far, we try to apply them one by one. All right. So let's go back to higher array methods. Like I said, what we want to do is to add scores to each of these students here. Now, if I pass in an arrow function, I can then say each of these students here, I want to call each one student, or let me say I'll call it each one, and then the index of each one. So why I'm writing this here is this. These objects do not have names. They do not have names here. It is the array that actually has a name. So for each will ask me, what do you want to call each of these objects? I want to call them each. You can call them anything. You can call them student. You can call them any variable you want. But here, I'm just calling them each. Network issues. Sorry about that. Sorry. What we'll do is after a short time, maybe if we get to 5, we might take a break and then come back again later if network will be better by that time. But we need to achieve something first before we go on a break and then come back later. So 3 persons have said they have network issues. It means the other ones don't, but let's continue. Let's achieve something first, then we can take a break later and then come back later to cover up for last week. Really? All right, let's find out. We have 19 persons here. Okay, for some persons it's stable, for some it is not. So let's find out what's the ratio and see if it's something. Okay. So for those who are having network issues, I sympathize with you. I understand, but we cannot push the class. We can't, because your class is supposed to end next month, and we have a lot to cover from now to next month. Actually, your classes will end on the second week of next month, or if not the first week of next month. From the second week, you should be building your project. Like, your full back-end project. So I cannot shift the class further except we want to run weekdays, which may not be comfortable for those who are working. So that is why we have recordings. If you have a network issues, don't worry. We'll make the recording available to you. So let me come back to this. I want to add 10 marks to every student. What I will do is I will call the student array and then call for each on it. For each is a method, and then I will call a callback function inside the method. Now it will ask me, what do you want to call each object? I'll call it each, and I take their index. Their index is, this is number 1 and this is number 0. That is what index is for here. So what I want to do is console log each the score plus 10. So what I'm doing is for each of them, I am taking the score and I'm adding 10 to it. So if I save this and come back to my browser, I will see that I have 170. So meaning it added 10 to this to make it 100, and it added 10 to this to make it 70. Now the line of code that is doing this is the for each. You can do that here and say something like each dot score plus 10, and then console log the entire, each. So that's what this is. There are so many ways to do it. So you can take each score and save it. It will then print each object with an increased score. No, it's not. So what we can do is not saving it here, but the other one is actually showing us the score like this. And you don't need this one either. You don't. So let's just keep it simple. Index. Now, in an array, all the items in an array have a position, or you call them index. So this is at position 0 because it is the first one. This is at position 1 because the second one, but JavaScript start counting as 0. So position and index is the same thing. So you can say this is at index 0 and this is at index 1. So that is what index means. So you can also console log their index too and say console log index. So if I save this, you will see it is printing out 100 and the index is 0. Then it's printed out this one 70 and the index is 1. But that's on a different scale. So out of 100 of this class, the network has allowed. Sorry. Now I would have shifted the class, but we can't afford that at this point. So the video recording should be very important to you once you get it. Cynthia, make sure you watch the video recording once it's out. So, but after now, we'll take a break and then come back to see if the network will be stable by then. So the next one is you want to see all their names. Now, all their names, you call student.map. Now, map is a method that returns a new array from an array. So here we have an array. If we call map on this array, it is going to return a new array from this array. So what I'm going to do is pass in a callback function here and say call them each and then take the index I Again, what I want to now do is say const names is equal to return each dot name. So this is a method. What it is returning is that for each object, it is picking the name and returning all the names. And it will store all those names here in a new variable. So that is why I said the method, the map method returns a new array from an existing array. Now the array it is going to return, if you look at it here, it is returning only their names. So if I save this and then decide to console log names here, console log names, you see now that it is returning just the names of the students. It's returning just the names of the students. Now you can also decide to return just their location. And now it is returning only their location in a new array. So this map method returns a new array from an existing array. And you can pick what to return. You want to return only their location or only their name. You can return two things and say return an object like this and say name is each location dot name, comma, their score should be each dot score. So what I'm doing is I am returning an object for each person, but what I'm returning is just the name, which is going to be, sorry, not the location, name, which is going to be each dot name, and then the score, which is going to be each dot score. Now, this is more like doing the same thing that is already there, but we are removing the location. So you can return anything. You can make it complex, you can make it simple. Now, if you don't want to go as an object, you can return it as a string and say return this and say return their location and their score. So if I save this, it is returning for each person, it returns their location and their score, location and their score. So there are so many ways to return something. Now, but what you know or what you need to know is that the map method is going to return a new array from an existing array, depending on the things you pick that you want to return. If you want to return only their names, if you want to return only their score, if you want to return their name and their score, if you want to return their location and their score, or maybe their name and their location. So you can pick anything you want to return. You can format it as an object. You can also format it as a string, depending on how you want it. JavaScript will allow it. Now the last one is the filter by score or maybe by location. Let's say they want you to return the details of the highest student or the student with the highest score, like that. Or return the details of the students from Rivers State. Or return the details of the student from Lagos. So when you have to return based on a certain condition, for example, const result is equal to student dot filter. So filter is a method that returns, now it is going to return the students, maybe all of them or one of them or any of them, but it is doing that based on a condition. Only the students that meet that conditions will be returned. For example, let's say we want to return the student that score above 90, or maybe 90 and above. All the students that score 90 and above. So I'll pass in an arrow function and then call them each and the index. And I say return the student where each dot score is greater or equal to 90. So now this is going to return the student that their scores are greater or equal to 90. So if I save it, you see that it is only returning one student and the score of that student is 90 because we use greater or equal to 90. So, but if I say return the ones that are greater or equal to 60, now it is returning 2 because the two students are actually, their scores are between 60 and 90. So it's going to fall into this condition. So this is how to return scores based on condition. Now you can add in another one and say maybe you want to return based on location. You say return where their location is equal to Rivers and save it. It's going to return only one student here. And if you check it, the location of this student is Rivers. You can also change it and say you want to return Lagos and save it. And if you open it up, you see that it is returning where the location is Lagos. So the filter method or the filter array method returns objects, or maybe one object or more objects, depending on a particular condition. You can say those that their scores are greater than 90, those that are scores are less than 50, those who are from Lagos, those who are from Port Harcourt, those who are male or females. So you can return based on a condition. So do we have any question on this? Do we have any question on this? Any question on this? As a matter of fact, any question on what we have done so far? I want to believe you can hear me. What?
Yes, sir. Can you scroll up to the beginning of the for each?
Okay, here.
No, the place where we started with the for each, where we have the map, the filter, and the each method.
Okay, here.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to actually share these codes with you. So do we have any questions? And should we take our break now or continue? So if we take our break now, we'll have to come back again, maybe by 7 p.m. or so. Come back by 7 p.m. to see that we get to run the final class before we move on to something else.
Okay, sir. What's the difference between the method and the function?
The method and the function. Now, this function is a callback function that you get to customize. You customize it to do a particular thing. Now, but the method itself is an inbuilt function that knows what you want to build. So because we call for each here, the for each knows that we're going to do something for each of them, but it doesn't know what you want to do for each of them. Now, it is your function that will tell it what you want to do for each of them. So that's the difference between the method here and the function. Now, the method knows that you want to do something for each of them, but it doesn't know what you want to do for each of them. Now this I is short for index. It's short for index. In a case where sometimes you may want to know the index of that item in the array. You may want to know if that is the first one, or if that is the second one, or if that is the last one, depending on, but it's not compulsory. It depends. I just added it there to show you that while you are picking the item, you can also pick the index of that item. So, any other question? Yes, Joshua, filters. Filters is not difficult. Let me explain it again. Now, if you want to filter, you might want to filter based on a condition. For example, let's say we have another student added here. And this student is called Joshua. And this student is called 30. And they are from Owerri. Now, you may be asked to print out the names of those who scored from 50 and above. So the condition there is that the student needs to score from 50 and above. So filter is a method that is used to return students or items or objects based on a condition. So that's what filter is used for, to return students or items or objects or details, or anything based on a condition. So you can be asked to return the students that wrote the exams from Owerri. So the condition there is that their location has to be equal to Owerri. You may be asked to return the student which his or her name is Tinubu. So the condition there is that the name must be equal to Tinubu. Or you may be asked to return the students that score below 50. The condition there is that their score is below 50. So that's what filter is. So here we are returning students that their location is equal to Lagos. Now you can use double equal or triple equals if you want. You can also change this and say const res or result or response, anything, is equal to dot filter. And here we want to use a different, let's call each. Now, if you don't want the index, you can forget about the index. Return the student that their score, each dot score, is less than 50. So it is going to return all the students that score below 50. Now, if I save this, you see that this is running on line 125. Line 125 is this line. Line 125 is this line. And this line is console logging this here. So it means that this is the filter that is working on line 125. And now this is line 125. And what are we printing? We are printing those students that their score are less than 50. So if I open it, it's printing out only one person. And that person is Joshua, because Joshua's score is less than 50. So that is what filter does for you. Filter returns a student or item or details based on a particular condition. So here now, the condition is that the location has to be equal to Lagos. And here, the condition is that their score has to be less than 50. So any question on this? Any question on this? Yes, we have done this. Now, if you want to return their score and their location, you will not be using filter again because that is not a condition. Rather, you can do something like this where we are mapping and returning their location and their score. So it is no longer a condition now. You're just returning the details. That's what you're returning, but not based on a condition. You're not returning. So if you say return the student score and their location, they're just asking you just return their score and their location. You're returning for everybody. You're returning for everybody here. So what you do is use map and return their location and their score, or you do it. There are so many ways to do it, or you do it as an object, but this is the easiest way to do it as a string, like this here. So you take the student array, call map on it, pass in a callback function that takes each of the item and the index, and then return each location as a variable and each score as another variable. Now, provided you separate them with a comma. And this is backticks. This is inside backticks, not quotes. I want to believe you remember what string concatenation is. This is string concatenation. All right, should we take our break now and come back by 7 p.m. or should we continue? Should we take that break now and come back by 7 p.m. or we continue? Yes, no. Yes, no. Okay, Said. Now, that is a good question because I didn't actually teach that part. You can tack on two of these methods together, meaning I can remove this one and say first, I want to return those that their scores are greater. Scores are greater than 50. That's the first thing it will do. It will pick all the students that their scores are greater than 50. Then you tack on another dot filter again. Then dot filter again. You take each and then you return each dot location is equal to Lagos. Like this. So the first time it is filtering all the students for those ones that are score are above 50. Then the second time it is taking what was filtered and then filtering it again to return those that their location is equal to Lagos. So that being said, we're going to take a break now and come back by 7 p.m. All right, guys. See you later by
Questions
7.
before the break. Can I ask the question, sir?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Now for this function student, all these for each method we are taking, are they all inside the function student that is inside one curly bracket, or is just on a different
Which of the can you hear me? Who's speaking first?
Did you get my question, sir?
No, Wisdom, I didn't. I'm trying to understand which function are you talking about? Hello, Wisdom.
Yes, I got cut out. Did you get my question, sir?
No, I didn't. Which of the function are you talking about?
Okay. I said for the student function.
This is student array, not function. Hello, Wisdom.
Yes, can you hear me now, sir?
Yeah, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, I say for the student function, all these
Which
names we are
student function? We
declaring.
don't have student function. This is student array. Student array. That's not a function. Which are the functions we have here is the for each, the map, and the filter. So which one are you talking about?
Okay. So we have the student arrays. Then all these other functions are working with the
A
student
method.
arrays
Yes,
method.
they are working the student array. Yes. So you can call this method on any array. It doesn't have to be student array. So that is why they are called higher array functions or methods. So you can call these functions on any array at all. It doesn't have to be a student array.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, guys. See you by 7 p.m. All right. Bye.